This is the Lex Beyond podcast by Lexicon Labs. I'm Lex.
And I'm Bianca.
I want to start today with an image that is, well, it's pretty disgusting actually. But we have to start here to understand where we're going.
You certainly know how to set a mood.
Just bear with me. Okay, so picture early 19th century England. You're walking past a pub, maybe down a back alley, and you see these very poor kids, youths, gathering up old beer kegs that the pub's thrown out.
Right.
They're draining the very last drops, the dregs, basically sludge into buckets. And then they take these buckets to some abandoned shop and sell this foul mix to anyone desperate enough to drink it.
It's a vivid picture, a little nauseating but vivid. And that, of course, is the literal origin of the term bucket shop.
Exactly. It sounds kind of industrial, maybe even a little rustic, but no, it started as the bottom of the barrel. Yeah. Literally. But here's the pivot. We aren't doing a deep dive on Victorian sanitation.
No, thankfully.
We're talking about how that term got recycled in late 1870s America.
Right. It stopped being about beer and, well, that started being about money, a lot of money.
But the spirit of the term, that kind of stayed, didn't it? It was still about the dregs. The financial bucket shops were these places that scooped up the tiny scraps of business that the big legitimate exchanges just threw away.
That is the perfect way to frame it. Today we are exploring this shadow market that really captivated America between, say, 1877 and 1915. This is the story of how the average person, the clerk, the barber, crashed the party of high finance.
And we are pulling all of this from some incredible research from Lexicon Labs, specifically from the historian David Hochfelder. His work really paints this era as a total Wild West.
It really was. It's a story about technology, addiction, and a violent war between the legitimate exchanges and these upstart gambling dens.
So let's get into the mechanics. By 1877, a bucket shop is no longer selling sludge. It's a place you go to bet on stock prices. Yeah. But you're not actually buying anything, are you?
No, and that is the absolute crucial distinction. You have to keep coming back to that. In a bucket shop, you are wagering on the price, but you never, ever own the stock.
Before we dig into the whole gambling side, we have to talk about the tech. None of this happens without that sound, that tick, tick, tick.
The stock ticker, invented in 1867. This machine changed the psychology of money forever. Before the ticker, stock prices were just these abstract things you read about in the newspaper the next day.
But the ticker made it real time.
Instant. It printed the price right there on a paper tape. It created this continuous flow of data. But the real catalyst, the explosion, happened in 1873, thanks to Thomas Edison.
I was reading about this, the quadruplex. It sounds like a piece of gym equipment.
It really does, doesn't it? But it was a revolution in bandwidth. Before the quadruplex, a telegraph wire could send one message at a time. Edison figured out how to send 4 messages over the same wire simultaneously.
So he quadrupled the capacity of the 19th century internet.
Precisely. And here's the key. Suddenly, Western Union had this massive surplus of bandwidth. They had empty seats on their wires and they had to monetize them. So the cost of leasing a private telegraph line just plummeted.
Which means the ticker could finally escape Wall Street.
It went everywhere. Hotels, restaurants, cigar stores, saloons. You could be sitting in a bar in Omaha watching the price of Union Pacific tick by in real time, just like a trader on the floor of the NYSE.
The research mentioned a quote from 1867 saying crowds around the first tickers were 6 deep. It sounds like people huddled around a phone watching a viral video today.
It was mesmerizing. It gave birth to this phenomenon they called speculitis, the disease of speculation. There was something hypnotic about the tape, the sound, that constant mechanical clicking. It created this sense of urgency.
The notes describe the ghosts of Wall Street, which is such a haunting image.
It is. These were men who'd been ruined by the market, lost everything, their fortunes, their families, but they couldn't stop watching. They'd just sit in these dingy bucket shops, staring at the tape day after day, just ghosts haunting the market.
So you have this addictive tech spreading everywhere, and that opens the door for the bucket shop entrepreneur. Walk us inside one. What's the vibe?
It varied wildly. Some were absolute dives, holes in the wall. But the successful ones, they were pure theater.
Like the Hate and Freeze chain, right?
Yes, or the Cosmopolitan's stock brokerage company. These places were designed to look exactly like legitimate brokerage firms. Mahogany counters, massive chalkboards on the walls, clerks rushing around. You'd walk in and think you were in the most respectable place in town.
But it was a set, a stage.
Completely. And this brings us to the mechanism of the grift. In a real brokerage, you give them an order to buy 100 shares. They go to the exchange. They buy the shares for you. You own equity.
And in a bucket shop.
In a bucket shop, you walk up and say, I bet Western Union is going up.
Yeah.
You put your money down, but the shop owner never buys the stock. They just take your money. You are betting against the house.
Which makes it a zero-sum game. If I win, the shop loses.
Exactly. A real broker wants you to trade to get a commission. They don't really care if you win or lose, but the bucket shop needs you to lose.
But people still played. And I think the reason is the leverage, right? The margin. This is the part of the research where the math got really scary.
It should. The NYSE was an exclusive club. You had to buy round lots of 100 shares, and you had to put up a 10% margin. That's thousands of dollars. A clerk or a barber couldn't afford that.
Like the bucket shop.
They'd take bets as low as $10. And here's the kicker. They allowed margins as low as 3%.
Okay, so let's unpack that math because this is the trap. If I buy a stock on a 3% margin, I'm putting down $3 to control $100 worth of stock.
Right.
But that also means if the stock price drops by just 3%,
you are wiped out entirely. Your equity is zero.
Yeah.
The shop closes your position and keeps your $3. And in a volatile market, a 3% swing can happen in minutes.
And since the shop holds all the bets, they can see where everyone is betting. If they see a ton of people betting on a certain railroad stock,
they can trigger a wash sale. This was the dirty trick. The bucket shop owners, who are often wealthy, would place a massive real sell order on the legitimate exchange.
So they dump the stock on the real market just to drive the price down.
Just for a moment. They crash the price by, say, 4%. That's enough to wipe out all their customers. The shop sweeps the board, pockets all the money, and then the price usually bounces right back.
That is absolutely brutal. It's like the casino owner has a remote control for the roulette ball. A bucket shop drive, they called it.
It was, and the customers had no idea. They just thought the market turned on them.
So, given that the game was rigged, who are these people flocking to the bucket shops?
Everyone who was shut out of the club. They called it the people's market. Clerks, small business owners, farmers, and, interestingly, a lot of women.
That stood out to me, the ladies' entrance.
Yes. You have to remember the Victorian social codes. For a woman to be seen in the chaos of the financial district was considered, improper. But the upscale bucket shops, they had private rooms, separate entrances. They catered to wealthy women who wanted to speculate without the gossip.
So it was inclusive, but in a predatory way.
That's a great way to put it,
Wow.
Predatory inclusion. But the demographic that caused the real panic was the young men, the clerks.
The clerk crisis.
A huge moral panic in the 1880s. You have these young men working in banks or law firms. They're surrounded by money. They hear the tips. They see the ticker tape. They want in.
So they borrow it from the till.
Embezzlement became a huge story. There's this one guy, George Lehman, in 1880, a clerk who stole $20,000 to cover his losses.
A fortune back then.
Massive. The narrative was that the bucket shop was this moral trap. But then, every once in a while, you'd get a Jesse Livermore.
The boy plunger.
He's the folk hero of this world. Started in bucket shops as a teenager. He was a math prodigy who just watched the numbers on the tape and saw patterns.
Yeah. And he started winning.
He won so much that the bucket shops, remember, they're casinos, they banned him. He was literally kicked out for beating the house. He proved that, in theory, you could beat them.
Which probably just encouraged thousands of others to lose their shirts trying.
Exactly. The exception that proves the rule.
So you have this booming shadow industry. They're stealing business, rigging games, the legitimate exchanges, the NYSE, the Chicago Board of Trade. They must have been absolutely furious.
Furious doesn't cover it. It was war. By the late 1880s, the bucket shops were eating their lunch. The Chicago Board of Trade estimated they were stealing 80% of the speculative business.
80%. That's not competition. That's an existential threat.
Exactly. And it drove the president of the Chicago Board of Trade, a man named Abner Wright, completely over the edge.
I love this part. Abner Wright was not a subtle man.
No, he went full vigilante. One morning in 1887, he walked onto the floor of the exchange and literally ripped the telegraph instruments out of the wall and threw them out of the building.
He just unplugged the internet.
Basically. But it gets better. A few months later, he's prowling around the basement of the exchange. He's paranoid. He finds these mysterious cables running out of the building and assumes they're secret lines feeding data to the bucket shops.
Spies.
He thinks so. So he orders them chopped with an axe.
were they spies?
No, they were the lines connecting the building to the police and fire department.
Oh my God, he cut the fire alarm.
It gives you a sense of the chaos. The exchanges were trying everything to cut off the flow of information. They tried to stop Western Union from sending their quotes out.
But Western Union is a business. They had all that bandwidth to sell.
Right. Western Union played a double game. They had contracts with the exchanges, but they were making a fortune leasing wires to bucket shops. Something like $1.2 million a year in 1884.
Tens of millions today.
At least. They even had circuit managers whose whole job was to keep the bucket shops connected, all while the executives were telling the exchanges, oh, we have no idea who's using these wires.
Plausible deniability while cashing the checks.
So the physical war, the axes, and wire cutting, it wasn't working. The real battle had to be fought in the courts. And this is where it gets intellectually really interesting.
It becomes a philosophical debate, right?
Yeah.
What is the difference between gambling and investing?
That is the core question. The bucket shops had a very strong defense. They'd stand up in court and say, look at the Chicago Board of Trade. People buy grain futures, but they never take delivery of the wheat. They just settle the price difference. If we're gambling, so are you.
That's a tough argument to beat. I mean, if I buy a corn future, I definitely don't want 5,000 bushels of corn showing up at my door.
Exactly. And for a long time, judges agreed. The bucket shops used this delivery loophole. They made every customer sign a little slip saying, I intend to take delivery of this stock.
Even though everyone knew it was a total fiction.
Everyone knew, but legally, it gave them cover for decades.
So what changed? How did they finally get crushed?
It went all the way to the Supreme Court, a 1905 case. And the opinion was written by none other than Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes.
A real heavyweight.
And Holmes had to thread this incredibly fine needle. He had to save the legitimate exchanges while killing the bucket shops.
So how did he distinguish them?
He created a distinction based on the class of the people involved.
Really? It came down to who was doing the trading.
In essence, yes. He argued that the legitimate exchanges facilitated serious business contracts. He said speculation by competent men, professionals, insiders, was socially useful. It helped adjust prices.
And the bucket shops?
He called those mere wagers. He argued the speculation by the incompetent, the clerks, the barbers, the small-timers, was harmful. It served no economic purpose.
Wow. So he basically said, it's not gambling if rich people do it because they know what they're doing.
That's a cynical reading, but it's not entirely wrong. He validated the idea that financial data was private property, and the exchanges could legally cut off the incompetent masses.
That feels incredibly classist by today's standards.
It was. But it worked. After that 1905 ruling, the walls started closing in. By 1910, you had federal raids in 7 cities.
And I imagine Western Union finally decided the risk wasn't worth the reward.
They saw the writing on the wall. By 1915, the New York Stock Exchange officially pronounced the bucket shop dead.
But the question that lingers is, you had millions of people who wanted to speculate? You shut down the bucket shops? Where did all that energy go?
It didn't just disappear. And this is the great irony. The exchanges eventually realized there was this massive market of small investors they'd been ignoring, but they needed a catalyst to bring them in.
And that catalyst was war.
World War I. The government launched the Liberty Bond drives, a massive marketing campaign encouraging every American, no matter how poor, to buy bonds to fund the war.
So suddenly the government is teaching the incompetent masses how to buy securities.
Exactly. It normalized investing for everyone. It wasn't gambling anymore. It was patriotism.
And the legitimate brokers saw an opportunity.
They did. By 1916, firms started accepting odd lots trades smaller than 100 shares. They started catering to the very people they had previously scorned.
They gentrified the bucket shop.
In a way, yes. They successfully transformed the bucket shop gambler into the retail investor of the 1920s, which of course led directly into the Roaring Twenties and, well, we all know how 1929 ended.
We do. And looking at this history, it's impossible not to see parallels today. We're living through another massive boom in retail speculation.
Oh, absolutely. The technology has changed. It's apps, not tickers, but the behavior is identical.
You look at crypto markets. It's that same Wild West energy. It's accessible 24/7, and it operates in this gray zone. It's clearly speculation, but it's not purely gambling like a roulette wheel.
Right. It mirrors that early era perfectly. High volatility, huge leverage, a mix of true believers and people just looking for a quick buck.
And then you have prediction markets. betting on elections, things like that.
Which is much closer to the bucket shop model. Those are often the zero-sum wagers on an outcome. It just shows that the appetite for this hasn't changed in 150 years.
It seems like we're constantly relearning the lesson that people just really want to bet on things.
We are. And if I can leave you with one final thought, it's this. The bucket shops were destroyed. Abner Wright and his acts eventually won. But the impulse that drove people to them, that desire for a shortcut, the thrill of the ticker, it never went away.
Speculitis is a chronic condition.
It is. The financial industry didn't cure the disease. They just found a way to bring the patients inside the hospital and charge them a commission.
On that slightly terrifying note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time. Watch out for those tickers.